Three, two, one. What's up, y'all? This is Tay Diggs here. Actually, it's not Tay Diggs. Too ugly to be Tay Diggs. What's up? Another edition of Super Facts. First of all, I want to say this Super Facts is brought to you by the good people. You know what I'm saying? Don't even get in an Uber unless they're using Waze. Don't get in a Lyft unless they're using Waze. Don't you get in your own car unless you're using Waze. Don't use Google Maps. Use Waze. It's the only GPS direction giver map thing that you should be using. So make sure you use Waze. So yeah, shout out to Waze for giving me this nice T-shirt. Yeah. So super fact today. First, I want to say Happy New Year on the Gregorian calendar. For everybody that's following the Gregorian calendar, which is most of y'all. Yeah, sure, you can view it. Hold up. All right, let me stop. All right, I don't know what I just did. Happy New Year on a Gregorian calendar, that is, because remember, there's all type of different calendars. It's mad people are like on the year 5,000. I think if you're using Unix, you're like on year 1,700,000, something like that. So shout out to everybody. Happy New Year to everybody following that good Gregorian calendar. Shout out to Pope Gregory the 7th or whatever, who made this in like the 1500s. Whatever. Anyway, so I don't want to ramble too much, and I want to be super concise and super to the point with this here edition of Super Facts. And I don't want it to go too long. Sometimes these Super Facts kind of just ramble on. I don't want to do that. I'm going to keep it super quick, super precise, but not too quick and too precise where you don't get the whole gist. So first, Happy New Year, everybody, on the Gregorian calendar. Shout out to my people that's on all type of different calendars. On the Chinese New Year calendar, my people on the Islamic calendar, there's people on the Unix calendar, there's some African calendars, even my people on that Jewish calendar. They on year like 5,000, something like that. So shout out to everybody that's celebrating the New Year. Hope it was cool for you. Today's super fact is I want to talk about, because today is also the last day of one of my favorite little opportunities to connect back with the motherland and all that means. Today is the last day of Kwanzaa. It is Imani, which means faith. The principle is faith. Well, it might not mean faith because the translations might be funky. But if you talk to somebody who actually speaks Swahili, it might mean something else. But for the most part, Imani is faith, right? If you translate it to English, it will come out as faith or something close to that. So don't beat me too much on the language. Kwanzaa is a 7-day celebration. But it's a little bit deeper than the celebration. It's a little bit more than the celebration. It's a little bit less than the celebration. It's a whole range of things. But basically what it is the 7 days. It starts, I think, the day after Christmas. Kind of on purpose, too, for that. And it's 7 days. There's 7 principles for each day. The first day is, I think, is it Umoja? I think it's Umoja or Ujima. I don't know. But it's one of those days. Somebody will clear it up. Somebody in the comments, can you just roll out all 7 days in order, and then I'll just lay them all out. But anyway, each day stands for like a different principle that you can choose or not to choose to practice. But it's really just kind of like advice. Now, I don't want to give a real dope, deep, concise history of what Kwanzaa is. I mean, you could just Google it and kind of go to different websites. Even the Wikipedia, and they'll have a good explanation of what Kwanzaa is. And I just want to kind of go through my personal experiences with Kwanzaa. I grew up practicing and adhering to Kwanzaa. So it's something that has always been around since I was born. It was just there, right? Just like, but Kwanzaa. Okay, cool. We doing that. So where do I want to start? Yes. So Kwanzaa is a... Wait, that's stupid, Lou. What are you talking about? I just lost my grip because I went somewhere else. What was you talking about? Yes. Okay. So Kwanzaa, right, is not necessarily a holiday. Okay? It's not necessarily a holiday. Necessarily. It's not necessarily a holiday. It's not necessarily a holy day administered or ordained or organized by some type of organized religion or unorganized religion. It's not necessarily a holiday or a group of holidays, right? Kwanzaa is at its core something that, and Kwanzaa was brought about this century, right? So it's not something that's 1,000 years old. It's not something that's even 100 years old, right? It's not even probably even 50 years old. Might be a little close, but Kwanzaa is a modern practice and a modern set of traditions. Kwanzaa is not an African holiday. Okay? It is not African. Okay? Let's just be clear. It's not African, right? It is African American, right? It's something that African Americans, who might not even want to be called African Americans, they might want to be called Pan-Africanists or some other kind of title that they want to call themselves. But for the most part, it was invented and kind of installed and initiated right here in the United States of America as a way to get back to some of the traditions and cultural aspects of the motherland, of Africa, right? We don't have to go through the whole history of black people in this country, but you know most of the black people that are here, that are in this country today, are descendants of slaves. Slavery, one aspect of what slavery did, amongst other tons of horrific things, and some, if you want to look at it a different way, maybe some positive things, if you look at it in a modern context. But it tore us away and broke us away from our traditions. Now, not totally, wasn't totally, because there were still traditional African ceremonies and practices and religions, and even Islam and even Christianity. Some of the slaves were Christian. Didn't know that, did you? And Muslim. Super fact. And some of them still practice kind of traditional African religions, even as they were here as slaves. There's one thing that slave masters and plantation owners and overseers couldn't necessarily stop to a certain degree, and you can still see some of those traditions all across the diaspora. The diaspora is this from South America, Central America, North America, where slavery and slavery took place, right? So you go to parts of Brazil, and you'll see these African kind of religions and things being practiced. When you see it, it looks very, 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 very African, and that's because it is. You go to other places where you see like mixes of certain things, so like voodoo in Haiti and in different parts and different type of things where there's like incorporations of different religions. So people would incorporate certain practices from their traditional religion as much as they could remember, or as much as they could practice without being too overtly, a threat to the system at the time. And they would mix that with some Christianity to kind of make it fit in. And then it went the other way too, where you had some Christian organizations who would blend things with kind of the African stuff. So it was always this trade, So, but anyway, the effect of that is that slavery kind of ripped us from the roots of our traditions. And then once you go post-slavery, you get into kind of like the movements around like Reconstruction, and especially movements around the pre-civil rights era, where there was like respectability movements and people trying to modernize and fit in, and everything that wasn't, it was more about fitting into the culture of what it is right now. And interesting, because the Jewish people went through the same thing. They went through the same process. Look that up. My homie was telling me about it. It was some crazy dinner. But anyway, where it was like, we need to acclimate to where we are. We live in America. This is where we are. We're not necessarily going back to Africa anytime soon, so let's just fit in, right? And wear suits and celebrate Christmas and even celebrate the secular holidays, but we're American, right? Blah, blah, blah. The effect of that was that you had it was still pulling people further and further away. So just imagine, you might have been in slavery times, you might have had some hints of pure African traditions and religions being practiced as the end of slavery. It might have been chaos or what have you, but then when you start getting toward the 1900s and the 20th century, it's about fitting in and respectability movements, and so you get further and further away from like the motherland. So you find yourself down in the 60s and the 70s, and there's this, or even the 50s, where you have this want for people to kind of reconnect in some aspect to where they came from, to reconnect to their roots and reconnect to one of their traditions. And I'm sure you've had there's many things and many ways to do that. Some people actually tried to go back to Africa. It's like, we finna just go back to Africa. You have certain people that's like, listen, we just gonna try and learn African languages. We're gonna dress African, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, So you had a range of things out of that whole thing. And even today, you still have people that are still trying to figure out ways to connect back to their roots and back to their traditions. And in that whole process, you get something like Kwanzaa, right? Which was, here is a opportunity to connect some way, either philosophically, physically, emotionally, traditionally, culturally back to your roots as your African roots, right? Because addressing and responding to that, a lot of our African history has been, stolen, taken, forgotten, rendered obsolete, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The range of things. Kwanzaa was set up to kind of to reinsert us in some way back into our traditions, whatever those traditions were. So it's an American situation trying to reach back to Africa. So sometimes when people say like, Kuji Jakalia means this, which is one of the principles, or Ujamaa means that, or such and such means that, you'll have Africans who'll be like, nah, that ain't what that means. That means such and such, such. But just remember, that it's not an African thing. It's a Western American type thing. And sometimes the translations might not be as accurate or to the point, but it's more to trying to get as close as we can to having that. So forgive us for maybe butchering the language a little bit, but it's all for the good, all for the love, right? So to the point, because this came up a few times in the comments, and this is why I'm doing this super fact. So for some people out there, you may not have ever heard of Kwanzaa, have no idea what it is, what it means. It might be weird, it might be that, but I think it's a good time, especially in this day and age, for young African Americans, no matter what your religious background is. Whatever your religious background is, if you're trying to find at least the first steps towards getting an understanding in a practical way, not in like an academic way or reading a book or going on Wikipedia or something like that. If you're just looking for a very basic, back to my African roots for dummies type situation, then I cordially invite you to come and try and experience Kwanzaa. Like, hip yourself to what Kwanzaa is, and it'll kind of give you a glimpse, a very tiny, admittedly, a very super tiny, and even in some cases probably mistranslated, but glimpse into African history, African culture, African heritage. Africa is this Swahili, in the Swahili land, and there's a Swahili people, but it's still meant to kind of encompass, it is kind of like a stew pot, right? Where it's like all these different things are in it, all these different traditions. Some of the traditions, and this is why I'm bringing this up, some of the traditions might go against your religious traditions, or so you may think. It might go against your political points of view, or so you may think, because if you start going through a lot of you go into a lot of the Kwanzaa principles, it's all about collectivity and community and togetherness, and it has the hints of like this kind of communistic manifesto, socialism, blah blah blah. When you get into the economics, cooperative economics, like what does that mean? Co-ops, is that cool? Da 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 da. Leave all that behind, right? But it still may be something that kind of like pushes back against what your ideas of capitalist thought should be and how the world should work from a religious, economic, social standpoint, right? Get that. For those things that do that for you, just set those things aside for the moment. The greater good of trying to experience and understand and practice or celebrate or whatever, however you choose to engage, let's call it engage, to engage with Kwanzaa, right? The overall goal is to give you a path back to where you came from, right? To kind of give you, and it may not be easy, it may not be great, it might not be cool. You might take the trip and be like, nah, I'm not rocking with this, right? But it's just to give you that opportunity to go back, right? The founder of Kwanzaa is an iffy dude. Some people like him, some people don't like him. I've seen him one time. I don't think I've ever met him, but I've seen him. We were in the same the same airport lounge thing. And I was like, oh, that's Karanga. His name is Karanga, right? Now he's a controversial figure, right? For various reasons. Again, whatever your likes, dislikes, hesitations, ilks, critiques, the whole thing of Karanga, or maybe even some of the principles of Kwanzaa, this, that, and the third, for a moment, if you can, set that to the side and look at what is the greater good of that, right? The greater good, again, it's an opportunity for you to engage, right? In a very introductory way, a very small way, but a way, nonetheless, back to your roots, right? In a unified, kind of structured, very meaningful, powerful, positive way, okay? And there's nothing else. There's no other tradition set, no other holiday, nothing on, at least on the American or the Gregorian calendar, that does that. Period. There's nothing, right? Now, not saying that there are some things, and people don't have different, groups or organizations that set up particular things and particular activities. They do, but it doesn't. It does not carry the same critical mass and the same critical weight. I mean, Donald Trump shouted out. I mean, all the presidents have to kind of shout out Kwanzaa, right? They may not do that or feel that they want to do that or feel politically inclined or socially inclined to shout it out. But that just shows you how much of a weight it has garnered over the years, right? So it's a very serious thing. It's a very big thing. And it's good, right? It's a good thing. So go out there and enjoy it. Again, this is the last day. This is Amani. It was faith. Kwanzaa starts the 26th of December, and it goes all the way through until today. I think that's it. Or is it the 20? No, the 26th is the day after Christmas. So from the 26th all the way to the 7 days, and then this last day, which is today, which is Imani. Celebrate and try and use Kwanzaa as a means to engage with your history and possibly some of your traditions. Now, again, you might not agree with all of it, right? And there's some people who hit me and was like, yo, that goes against this religion, it goes against that religion, it goes against this, it goes against that. And your responses and my response is that the way I choose to engage with Kwanzaa, I don't engage it as a religious practice. Now, there's elements in it that were possibly derived from some type of African religious practice or some African religious tradition, but you got to be very careful between what is considered to be a religious practice, right, and what is a cultural practice, right? Because culture is longer than religion. There was culture way before there was religion. Remember that, especially the organized religions that we practice today. These religions are just thousands of years old, right? Culture's been around since the beginning of man, right? So some of the practices and the traditions, right, may not be what you think they are. So be careful not to kind of look through it through the lens of something very modern and something that actually would have been an enemy to African culture. So remember that a lot of the traditions and religions that we practice today were enemies to African culture. Like the Christianity and Islam were part of instituting the slave trade. Super facts. So be careful what you do. And also remember the language of Kwanzaa is Swahili. Swahili is an Arab African kind of like marriage, right? So Amani, faith, Iman, faith. I mean, be careful, right? Before you start throwing stones, before you start really getting down into what it's really about, right? Because there might be some shared value systems which are very important. Where if you're trying to get somebody to engage in a particular activity or a particular behavior that is beneficial to them, and you feel it's from a religious place, and you want to push people toward that religion, don't burn any bridges for people to get there. As long as they're practicing or trying to achieve or get to those great things which are within the principles of Kwanzaa, right? Which are like to be mindful of others, to think about community, right? To think about, having trust and building up trust, and not only in yourself but also in other people, to exercise and express your creativity, but creativity for the purpose of making society better. I mean, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, is what I'm saying when it comes to Kwanzaa. If you don't know, if you just looking at Kwanzaa with a very kind of short-sighted lens, point of view, and anything that's not within your way of practice or your thinking or your religion is automatically bad, then I would say don't even talk about Kwanzaa. Please, just or if you are, learn all about Kwanzaa. Learn every single element and aspect, where it came from, what it means, everything, so that when you do come with a critique of Kwanzaa, that you've done all the research and you can actually shut it down coming from a place of knowledge as opposed to coming from a place of prejudice or ignorance about the subject, right? Just because you don't like it or you feel that it goes against your traditions or your practices. So, but overall, done with the critics. But the people who are really trying to engage and get a little bit of more of an understanding about their history, specifically African Americans, but white people, y'all invited too. Mexicans, come on in. My Asians, come on in. Eskimos, jump on all in the boat. Everybody can jump in and engage in some of this old Kwanzaa love and situations like that, right? So everybody's invited, specifically for the young generation, this new generation of African Americans. If you're looking for a place or some type of activity to engage and have the opportunity to engage in whatever way you feel like you need to be or feel comfortable doing based off your history or what you're trying to get, what you're trying to accomplish, Kwanzaa, it's the last, starts the 26th every December, and it goes on through January 1st, which is today, and it's 7 days. Each day is a specific principle that you hopefully can try and study or research or even try and instill in your life. And it's a great, beautiful thing, and cordially invite you, young men and young women of African descent out there in the diaspora that is North, South, and Central America. If you want to get back in on your roots, come on, get some of this Kwanzaa. You feel me? So that was that. Super facts. I wanted to be concise. Didn't want to go too long. Shout out to my sponsor today, which is Waze, the application that gets you where you need to go. You feel me? If you ain't using Waze, then you need to throw your phone away, basically. So anyway, Lupe signing off. Another edition of Super Facts. Shout out to my man, Master Pilot Hill, Mizzy Mick, 50 Caliber, Jacob Teresi, who says Jesus is Lord, Miss Reno, happy Kwanzaa to you too. Who is this? B-Bun06 with the plug. Shout out. And Legally Browns, walaikum assalam to you as well. And Nashizi53, salam alaikum to you too. So shout out to all my fans. And I'll see y'all next time on another edition of Super Facts with Lupe Fiasco. Oh, you feel me? All right. Happy New Year. Be safe, be blessed. Peace and much love to you. We's out of here. Son.